The visual novel is a really underrated medium of storytelling. A well-done visual novel is insanely immersive due to how it's technically a video game, yet at the same time it's also not one. Well, usually. Visual novels exist in the gray area between game and novel, and this is why the medium is easily one of my favorites. However, visual novels tend to fall into a common trapping, which is why many people haven't gotten to experience the true power of this medium. Even if someone gets past the technological hurdles to play a lot of them, they still might be turned away by the sheer amount of... yeah. Most visual novels are porn. In fact, even the story-based ones tend to be erotic in nature, and that, my friends, brings us to Desire. This review will contain minor spoilers, so just a heads up. Desire has 3 routes. While you could play the second route first, the first one is listed first on the startup menu for a good reason. Via this route, you get to see everything through the perspective of someone who's experiencing the setting for the first time and experience the mysteries of it along with the protagonist. Then, once you complete his route, you get to see the events of the first route from the perspective of someone who is knowledgeable of the story setting and is acquainted with the people who inhabit it. The first route stars Albert McDougal, a reporter. He's been given the opportunity to look into the island called Desire, where there are supposedly scientific breakthroughs being accomplished. Coincidentally, his girlfriend Makoto is one of the scientists who is working on the island, so along with seeing his girlfriend for the first time in weeks, Al is also given the opportunity to write a piece on what is happening on the island, which could give a huge surge in popularity to the paper he works at. This sounds like a win-win situation at first, however, Al begins to realize that things are not as they seem. After the discovery of a young girl who mysteriously winds up on the beach of Desire, much more strange events happen on the island. Desire is a game that has lots of personality. This is particularly shown via its protagonist, Al. Al is hilarious. His jokes are crude, and they give him a much more memorable personality than the typical visual novel protagonist. However, Al's quips are the only things he's really got going for him as a character. His heart seems to be in the right place, as he cares about helping people, yet he cheats on Makoto quite a bit. In fact, he's even cheated on her before the story began. The main problem of this visual novel arises in the first route and is also present in the second, this being the forced sex scenes. I am not a prude. If a sex scene adds to the story or to a character's development, I've got no problem with it. However, if a sex scene detracts from the story, then I will have a problem with it, just like I'd have a problem with any other shoehorn plot development or cliche. Desire has a lot going for it. It's got such an intriguing premise that is helped as the story goes on with the addition of more plot threads. It also has a likable protagonist in Al. While the other characters aren't too memorable on their own, their chemistry with Al often leads to plenty of hilarious exchanges. These great plot threads and character interactions are wasted on a game that insists on having sex scenes everywhere. Al lays pretty much every girl on the island, and it feels so unnecessary. If the game wanted to highlight Al's infidelity, they could have easily had him cheat on Makoto with only one girl, or maybe even just 2 to keep things somewhat realistic, but no. And now let's go to the second route. This route is abysmal. It stars Makoto, and I was hyped to play this route because I really wanted to see what was going on from her end while Al was making jokes about jerking off. Since Makoto is the head scientist, I thought that we'd learn things that you couldn't learn from Al's route. Instead, we get a little bit of that, sprinkled into a plot that tries to equate sexual abuse to romance. Hooray. This route totally demolishes what made Makoto interesting in the first one. She's interesting because of her position on the island and what she knows due to that, and Makoto's also interesting because of her position and her relationship with Al. It's hinted at in the first route that Makoto knows that Al is cheating on her. How does she react to this information? How does it make her feel? You do get that information, but you also find out that Makoto is a hypocrite. She's freaking out over seeing Al having sex with another woman when she had sex with Reiko just minutes before. All of the pity Makoto garnered from me in the first route totally disappeared when I found this out. Why are you getting so broken up about Al cheating on you when you just did the same thing to him? I get that he's cheated on Makoto before, and this is likely her first offense, but if Makoto values fidelity in her relationship, why did she have sex with Reiko? She's breaking the moral code she expects others to follow, and this makes me unable to pity her in regards to this. Aside from ruining Makoto's character, as I mentioned earlier, this route tries to equate sexual abuse copious with love, and wow, is it vile. Not only does this route make Makoto out to be a hypocrite, but it totally destroys any dignity she had left by subjecting her to such awful experiences. The worst part about this is that the game makes sure to let you know that Makoto feels terrible about the shit that's happening to her, but it still tries to equate this stuff with love. It seems as if the game is almost punishing Makoto for cheating on Al. Meanwhile, Al is not punished for sleeping around, and instead wins the heart of pretty much every girl on the island. Fortunately, this game did come out almost 25 years ago, so hopefully visual novels that try to be story-based now don't do such sexist shit. That's what I'm hoping at least, but I don't play modern visual novels that aren't otome games, so I have no idea. As for the third route, describing what it's about is a huge spoiler, but it has no sex scenes whatsoever. It's an entirely story-based route. It ties up everything that you've seen rather nicely, although it is a bit confusing. But it's great to finally have all these loose ends tied up. The only downside to this route is that it's more serious, so it doesn't have the comedic tone of the first one, but this one is easily the most solid route out of the three, as it actually focuses on what's important and doesn't ruin anyone's character along the way. As for the characters, there aren't too many that I can talk about in depth without totally spoiling the game, but the best character, aside from Al, someone who can't be named because of spoilers, and what Makoto could have been if the second route didn't exist, is easily Kazumi. She's awesome, and does not put up with Al's shit, which leads to hilarious conversations. Unfortunately, none of the characters really interact with her much, but she's easily the best character in the game, as her moral compass isn't shady, and the game doesn't try to dehumanize her. I'm also gonna mention Sylvia, because I'm pissed at how the game destroyed her character. She starts out as an energetic tomboy. We later find out that she's self-conscious about her perceived lack of femininity. Instead of giving Sylvia a redeeming arc and letting her know that it's okay not to be a stereotypical girl, the game shames her for being a tomboy, and she finds her femininity in her attraction to Al, because he had sex with her. It's just abysmal. I get that this game originally came out almost a quarter of a century ago, so the progressive values I mentioned earlier weren't even close to as prevalent as they are now, but that fact doesn't change how awful this arc was to read. Now that we're done with the story elements of the game, let's take a look at its technical elements. The music in this game is fantastic. It was composed by the late Ryu Umemoto, who is probably my favorite video game composer of all time. He pushed the PC-98 to its limits and created a soundtrack that's insanely memorable. If this soundtrack were available on Spotify, it would be in my saved songs playlist, no question. However, you can find the game's soundtrack uploaded to YouTube in a giant compilation, which you can find via a link in the description. The soundtrack's also been playing this entire video, so if you like what you've heard, make sure to give it a listen. The art in this game is also really nice. The backgrounds of the Windows version are well done, but what I really love are the backgrounds for the PC-98 version. Uh-oh, my inner Tumblr hipster jumped out. The character designs are great. They're nice to look at, and every design gives you a glimpse into each character's personality and intrigues you. From what I talked about in this video, you might think that my opinion of Desire was negative. However, even with Desire's flaws, I still enjoyed it quite a bit. When I played it, it was the only game I really completed back then, as I wasn't motivated to play anything else. When I think of Desire, the first things that come to mind aren't the awful second route, or how it totally ruins some of its most interesting characters. I think of the game's great music, character designs, hilarious character interactions, and how absorbing the story was, even if it was a clusterfuck at times. I would have considered Desire a good game prior to writing this review, but now that I've looked at and thought about its flaws, I just can't say this is a quality game. I've wondered why this is, and I think I've found the answer. Prior to writing this review, I've only thought about the good things the game has. I basically pushed the bad things about it out of my mind, essentially convincing myself that they don't have as much of an impact as the good things. Is this true? It was for me while playing it, and it could be for you if you're interested. But I have a feeling that most people aren't as forgiving as me, or that, ironically, by making this video, I've made the flaws stand out for anyone who might have been interested in playing Desire. Therefore, I wouldn't recommend this to anyone. Even if you do focus on the good, the bad things are there and they will hinder your experience one way or another. And if you want to play this game with one hand, you can't really do that either. You'd be waiting for like 45 minutes to get to each scene, so there's not really a point in using it for that purpose. In short, this is a game that tries to appeal to everyone, but instead loses its appeal to both groups it's aiming for. You'd think that Desire would have never caught on given my criticisms, but this game has had an insane amount of ports and remakes for a game this unheard of in the West, even among the visual novel community. happy. I guess there are a lot of people in Japan who fit into both audiences. And that is the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and subscribe if you enjoyed it. I would also like to thank you guys for not just 1,000, but now 2,000 subscribers. I didn't really get to do that in my last video due to its length, but I'm extremely grateful. I'd like to do something special to celebrate, but I'm kinda clueless on what I want to do, so if you guys have any ideas, let me know in the comments. I have some ideas that I've been throwing around, but I'm not too sure about any of them, and it'd be interesting to see what you guys want, because I wouldn't be here without you. Ironically, I've gotten a lot more subs during a point in my life where I don't have too much time to focus on making videos, but I'm gonna try to dedicate whatever time I do get to creating, so that should hopefully mean more video output than last year. Thanks for watching and listening to me blabber on, and see you in the next video.